I believe everything happens for a reason. And if you click this video, if you have that subtle feeling of, wait, this title resonates with me, this title speaks to a certain part of me that's maybe suppressed, I want you to follow that because I want you to know that you're not alone with it. I have been fortunate enough to work with a lot of big companies, to meet a lot of remarkable people, to be able to travel and do different things that I want to in life, and feel like I've hit the goals that I thought would make me happy and give me everything I ever wanted. And temporarily it does. And then, a couple weeks, months later, you find yourself with this feeling that you have everything, but you also simultaneously have nothing. And it is the worst feeling and the most lonely feeling on the planet because then you start asking your friends for guidance. You start going through and reading different books around it. You start scrambling to like try to feel complete and wonder what's wrong with you. And I'm here to tell you that there's nothing wrong with you. And it's something where you need to get out of a certain frame of reality. You need to release a certain part that's just holding you back so that you can feel complete, because you're right to assume like, wait, I have everything I should want. I have a family, I have, achievements, I have this, I have that. Like, I know if I just go out and get more of it, like I would more or less feel the same. So like what is the actual real problem? And if you click this video, you're probably the type of person that's looking to uncover the real type of the problem and get to the source of it. And that's what this is going to cover, is getting to the source of why you have nothing, but simultaneously feel like you have uh, why you have everything, and then simultaneously feel like you have nothing. It's because of a series of certain things that just quite aren't firing. And I think it's the scariest feeling to have because you can just feel like you're kind of like floating. Yeah, it can feel very frustrating. It can feel heavy. Like I remember when I was hitting some of my very top months as a closer, right? 20, 30K a month, right? You're hitting that for the first time. And you're just like, oh my God, like I made it. Like this is awesome. This is great. And you do that for a couple months and then you're just like, like, is there more to life? Right? You start to ask yourself that, right? Or you launch a really big business with a brand, right? When we launched Sales.io, it's, oh wow, I got a cool company, right? You start getting clients, you start growing it, you start having a team, you're like, oh yeah, now that will make you happy. Doesn't make you happy, right? You do a bunch of coaching calls, right? You do a bunch of sales calls. You do your thousandth sales call, stuff like that. You get a certain amount of cash collected. You're like, that's the number that's going to get me happy. And then you just don't feel happy. Or you're, wait, I'm going to meet this person. And then that's when I'm going to be happy. I'm going to meet my idol. I'm going to finally learn this skill and then I can be happy. And you start to understand the fallacy that you keep putting it off life before you actually live it. You keep just delaying your life, putting it off. And and then you start to look around and you're like, wait, I do have everything. Why do I still not feel complete? This is the thing that's actually going to walk you through why you don't feel complete and actually solve it for you. And this is based off of a lot of really essentially decades of cycling through this feeling, not knowing what was going on, and then just kind of figuring my way out. I wanted to create a protocol to help myself get out selfishly, right? And help people in the process, but selfishly help myself that, okay, Cole, you're feeling lost. Just watch this video of you going through, hey, everything's okay. You just need to go through these things and you're fine, right? This is the video that I would tell myself. So if you had any subtle feeling where you just feel disconnected, all of that, just understand that it's okay. And this is what's going to actually allow you to get out of it. So here's the document: why you have everything, but simultaneously feel nothing. This is going to get through everything. So what we're going to cover and what you're going to understand is why every problem you actually have is a perspective problem and why that changes everything. You're going to understand why trying to figure it out is only enhancing your suffering and keeping you in a perpetual loop, why your physiology is the atom of everything, the basis of it, and that you're not trying to solve for an electrical thought level process. You're trying to solve for a chemical process first, which I'll explain what I mean by that. And then also how to stop holding on to a lens of reality just because you believe it to be true. This is absolutely deadly that people do this, right? This is a whole thing. And then the actual protocol that will actually get you mentally clear, vibrancy again, because right now you're at a state of just feeling lost, feeling like you should, right? It's a should energy. It's like I should be tapped into reality, but I'm not tapped into reality. I'm feeling disconnected from it. How do we create a state of connection? And that's the way to think about it. It's like what you're doing is essentially, if you're being honest with yourself, you're being the victim. You're being the victim and you're just kind of sitting here and you're like, I feel disconnected from reality. I feel like this. I feel like that. And you're getting in a state of helplessness. And what I want you to do as you watch this video is get into a state of resourcefulness, right? There's either states of helplessness or resourcefulness. It's very similar that there's only two emotions that you can simultaneously experience, right? You can only experience fear or you can only experience love. And the fear frequency is around helplessness. It's around, I do not have enough resources to do this, so why even bother trying? And I know your emotion is real because I have felt it so many times before, more than you would, care to realize. It's so common. And at the end of the day, when you look at it, it's a sense of victimhood. It's a sense of helplessness. It's like, oh, look at me, this and that. And it's not your fault and it feels real. And it's almost just like your body's way of trying to get attention. I don't know why it happens, but it's something where you're just feeling like there's no answer for it and kind of tricking your mind into a state of helplessness when really the answer is there all along. And it's kind of just like any problem in your life. It's kind of like, I need to solve this business problem, or I need to do this, right? You're not like, I don't know, I have everything. Why can't I solve it? You just like go and solve it. So for this, it's just tricking you because it's switching one of the beliefs where you're buying into the fact that you're maybe helpless or buying into the fact that you can't solve it because you're assuming I have everything, but I don't feel complete. But you don't have everything. And there is something you're missing in the sense of potentially letting go or changing the lens. So the answer is there. So what I want you to encourage as we go through this is get out of the state of helplessness, of victimhood, of those low frequencies of I should be doing this, could be doing that. That is only going to separate you from understanding the vibrancy that's in your life. Because no matter, you don't need to be, at a cool place. You don't need to be making a certain amount of money, everything like that. I, I I know this is like such a cliche, but genuinely, when you have it, a certain baseline is nice. It gets your head above the water. But like, even after the certain baseline, you truly realize that it's you versus yourself. And if you are not happy with yourself and if you do not feel complete, no amount of muscle on your body, no amount of money in your bank account, no matter how big your runway savings is, no matter how much of savings you have, no matter your monthly cash flow, no matter your absolute net worth, it does very little to create a true sense of peace that's everlasting. It can do it for a little bit, it can do it for spurts, but when the silence and the dust settles in and you just have the voices in yourself, that's where the true testament of your emotional resilience starts to speak through genuinely. And no one talks about this. That's why I have this channel. No one talks about these things. And that's why I want to talk about it, is that that's where the real conversation starts to happen because all the surface level stuff is gone. And now you're starting to have a conversation with the infinite, right? The finite is all the cars, all the women, all the different, things that you feel like are going to give you the things that you want. When all of those start to fade away, all you have left is a conversation with yourself. And that conversation, you need to calibrate for it constantly. And it's great if you have some initial success. I've seen a lot of people that are really young have initial success. It's very common in this industry for people to be young and to have that great success. But I see a lot of patterns of they have it, and then they're repressed. They have it, or they feel fluctuating of emotions because you can't run from the actual internal work because that is the baseline of your reality. So if your lens, and most people are building their lens of reality through faulty foundations. So it always cracks. Once the externals run out, once you don't have some type of variable that was propping up your self esteem, as soon as that crumbles, you crumble. And you left yourself vulnerable the whole time because you didn't actually have a strong frame of reality. You need a strong frame of reality to absolutely control everything that you want in life. You need a strong frame of reality. So, as we're going through this, get out of the helplessness state and go over into the resourcefulness. Right? There's two types of states too in sales and in speaking and influence. You have formulaic and you have generative. Formulaic is following the path, following the script. I feel helpless. Okay, let me just keep running that. Let me just keep running that. And you keep perpetuating that as a victim. And you're a slave to a story that's going on in your mind. It's formulaic. Story says to do this. I just followed the story. Are you bigger than the stories you tell yourself? You have to come to grips with that and decide, am I bigger than the stories? If you're not, then keep following that story over and over. If you are, you can rewrite the story. And you rewrite that through generative languages of resourcefulness, of possibility projection, of looking out into the future and being like, I can do more for my reality. And when you start speaking like that, you start to have a completely different energy signature that allows you to break out of this feeling. So the reason why I'm being so blunt and direct with you is I've been through these exact motions so many specific times, and I've seen so many specific students go through the exact same thing. And if you don't actually care at a deep level, it will get to you at such a level and start to catch up to you, or you just break one day if you're not building off strong fundamentals. So I want you to build off strong fundamentals, and that's where they first come from. Okay. So with this first part, the frequency that you're stuck in, the best way to describe this is you'll fall into this trap, right? And you'll see this, right? You'll try to understand why you feel this way. You're going to try to understand, and you're going to go deeper and deeper into analysis. And you're going to find that you're in the exact same position you were before. I can't count how many times I went through this exact same trajectory with any single life problem you can imagine, whether it was in health, wealth, love, or happiness. In any one of those situations, I would, if I ever found myself just like asking a mentor, asking this person, and the thing's not resolving over and over and over again, I started to realize that I was in the perspective trap. I was in the trap where I was solidifying the actual experience, and I wasn't actually doing any good when I was reaching out to these people, because everyone has your interest in heart, but why you're not freeing yourself from it is you're so attached to the story. You're so attached to the story, right? So let me show you how this works. It's almost like a carousel of a thought, right? That's how my one mentor would put it. It's like we feel the weight, right? Something is wrong. I feel like I have everything, but something is missing. You then go into this flywheel of analyzing why. Right? Where does that come from? I wonder where that comes from. Is it from my childhood? Right? A lot of you are analyzing your childhood too much. Right? Oh, does it come from my childhood? Did it maybe potentially come from this? Did it come from the food that I ate? Right? We're gonna start doing this analyzation. Right? And as soon as we start doing that, we start solidifying that something's wrong. We then go deeper. I need to understand this. Right? So then you start to maybe do that socially. You start to maybe do that independently with books. Right? Got some books right here. So the book of the day. Right? For Tai Lopez, right? Metaphors we live by, right? There's that book, but you start maybe doing individual pursuits to go deeper, and then you start to solidify a frame. You're just like, maybe this is who I am, or maybe I can't change this, and then it solidifies the frame. And then you're like, why do I always find myself in the same spot? And then the weight increases. So this is where you can essentially create like a downward death spiral in your life, where you're constantly trying to reach, you're constantly trying to solve it. But every time you do, you find yourself in the same position, or you find yourself in a worse position. And it's like, you're just wondering like, why can't I shake this off? Why can't I shake this off? It's because you're in this loop. And how you break out of this loop is you need to completely step out of the frame. So this is a frame of reality, right? When I say, why do I have everything and feel nothing? That is a frame of reality. I'm assuming that I have everything, and I'm also assuming that I have nothing. So when I create that frame, when I create that picture frame, right here's the picture frame, for example, this is the reality I then see. But there's a whole reality, behind this person, behind this artwork, and seeing this person's face. There's a whole perspective that goes outside of this very frame that I can see here. There's different frames of reality that I can actually step into. And when you're just in this story, you're solidifying it. So the one thing that we always teach in the Sales.io community is that the context determines the content. And if I change the frame of reality, if I change the questions that I ask myself, for example, I can change the realm at which I'm experiencing my problem. And that is the biggest thing I want you to take away from this, is the best way to free yourself from this is perspective. And I don't mean perspective in like a positive sense. So I don't mean like, oh, like be positive. And I don't mean it in the sense that people have it worse than you. I mean perspective in terms of like the lens that you look at it, right? The reason why you're stuck in this feeling is you're attached to this feeling. So you hold on to it very tightly, right? What we need to do is have it where you are able to elevate away from it. You're able to lift up and have a look at it and almost look at it comically because you're just like, oh, how did I even believe that? Ah, yeah, I was believing that. Ah, now I'm over here or whatever. You need to separate yourself from that, right? And all self-help, all meditation, all yoga, all, go down the list of everything. What it does is it opens up perspective. It takes you out of a certain state over into a new state. And when you do that, you're able to actually start solving your problems and start actually changing the realm. So ask yourself that. If I keep experiencing a problem, how can I just change the realm at which I view it from, right? Practically, like if I'm having anxiety, right? How can I read the best books on anxiety on how to solve this? Or anxiety, how can I read a philosophy book around the meditations of maybe death and control, so I can understand maybe control in that better. How can I maybe journal like what am I actually specifically anxious about and like actually write it out, right? Or what can I do to be like, hey, instead of trying to ask myself the question of like, how can I deal with anxiety, right? How can I actually have it where anxiety just doesn't exist? Or how can I have it where I love anxiety so much that I'm completely okay with it having in my life? Or what if anxiety isn't a problem and it's just it's a part of being a high performer and it's a completely human thing to have, and it might be hard sometimes, but I welcome it and it's chill, and you find ways to get healthier and cope with it, right? That's another frame. But notice how these questions that were here, they start to dissolve away because now we're in a different realm of reality. So you need to ask yourself, if you're getting into these reoccurring themes of, "Oh, I have everything, all of that," the first thing you think about is like, how can I change the realm? How can I change the realm of the problem? And then you're going to break out of it. The next is the lens trap, right? This is really connected to what we just said there, but it's the whole idea that there is no true lens of reality, right? Every single lens that we look at, every single lens is limited. Every single lens is just like a little part of reality. And you have to understand that this is just one of those lenses. And when you step out of the perspective trap, right? And you're kind of, in the lens trap almost essentially, right? With like, oh, well, this is true. I do have everything and I'm not happy. Or this is true. That you start to realize that there's so many ways that you can look at your life that if someone with a different perspective, right? Imagine someone that didn't have the success that you had or had the discipline of you. They're able to look into your life. How would they view it? Well, they would view it that, wow, this person's driven, this person's motivated, this person has a life that I would have instantly, right? How crazy is it that that person is looking at a life that you have and is saying like, wow, like this is exactly what I want, right? And from their perspective, it's everything they could ever want and fathom and imagine their life to be, and you live it every single day, right? We forget that that is true for pretty much everyone, right? Depending on the levels of it. But it's not so much that the human or the circumstance changed. The only thing that really changed was the perspective of how they view success and the perspective of how they view completion in their life, right? And through your success and through you going up, you've warped that lens so many times that you're starting to not really understand the reality that you're actually living and just like fully embracing it. So that's what this does, is this allows you to unravel from the lens and allow you to actually move forward with everything. So the biggest thing is the perspective trap. Once you also break out of the lens and understand that there's no true lens of reality, you're then able to move with even more speed. But this is where it gets good. So it's like, let's say, okay, I understand that there's different perspectives, there's different lenses. Okay, so be it, I'm going through that. What is like a practical way to really get out of it? Because yes, Cole, maybe I understand that it's a lens and it's a perspective problem, and that I need to expand my perspective. And then second, I know that no lens is equal, that all lenses of reality are inherently limited and distorted, and we can't see the infinite greatness of the universe. So I understand that. So I understand my perspective. I need to change it and understand not to get too attached to lenses. But in the third point, what can I just practically do? Because I understand this, but it's hard to do it. And this is where the third one comes in, is that you have to be, whenever you find yourself in a rut, you have to get into a resourceful state. But you do that by first creating a resourceful physiology. You have to have a resourceful physiology. You have to increase the amounts that you're going outside and connecting with nature. You got to increase the amount that you're maybe not listening to music or stimulating yourself through your phone, right? Ask yourself, what is your screen time? What is these different levels that you know you should be doing, right? I'm saying this to some of you, and you're like, yeah, I've heard that before. But how much are you actually picking up your phone, right? Do you know that? Right? You can look at those things and like double check and be like, okay, I'm picking up my phone XYZ amount of the time. I'm picking it up this way, right? I mean, you can actually go through and get like an analysis of those things and start to realize like, wait, I'm actually slipping here, right? So think of the steps. Think of how much are you working out? Think of nature. Think of disconnection. Think of your phone specifically. How can I limit social media? All of that. That is what's going to actually allow you to unravel from these frames. Because part of why you keep latching onto this story that you maybe don't have enough is because your body is so stressed and it's so tight and it's so focused in on that frame. And when you start to get stronger and focus on your health again and have a better diet, you start to free yourself from that frame. You start to expand perspective. So you always have to attack it from the physiology first, the chemical level, right? And there's these different layers of behavioral change. And we get into this in more of like the advanced course and stuff, but the basis of everything is chemical, right? All of your thoughts and emotions are chemical reactions that are essentially happening, especially your specifically the emotions as well, right? They're chemical reactions, right? Including thoughts. They're chemical reactions that are happening. Those chemical reactions can only happen um, through a physical, mechanism, and that is through the nutrition, movement, different mechanisms in your body. And if you don't have the correct supplementation, the correct diet, the correct movement, you're already creating the basis for low frequency thoughts. You're already creating the basis for things that are not going to be conducive of expanding your reality. So you need to remember and to be very mindful that, okay, if I'm losing state, the lowest hanging fruit, it's like, okay, whatever. I can give myself an excuse of not having the most empowering thoughts. I can give myself the excuse of just going through the motions. But one thing I will not allow is I won't allow not to work out today. I will not allow to not go for a walk. And when you do those things, you start to expand reality again. You start to expand your physiology and then get out of these states of low energy and low resourcefulness. Start to feel life again. You start to feel the vibrancy. Not because the anything changed. The only thing that changed is like you got out of your head and you got into the moment. So a lot of the solutions in pretty much all of this channel, but any spiritual work is essentially just getting out of your head and resting within the moment and being radically self-forgiving, self-accepting, and just being grateful for the moment and having the moment unravel in front of you and feeling already complete and feeling that feeling of love inside of you already. When you do that, then the universe has no other choice but to just have it there for you and for you to just kind of flow through versus always yearning for things and always desiring things. So physiology first is the biggest side of it, absolute biggest side of it. So understand chemistry problem first, and then you go through. And if I were to expand off of this, it would be these three layers, right? So once I master the chemical layer, I would then do the social layer as well. So if I'm feeling really down, I'm going to get the best workout protocol possible. That's like fun, exciting that I can like go on to. I'm going to second think of the things that I can eliminate. So what can I eliminate on my phone? What apps can I eliminate? What different routines or things that am I doing that I can eliminate? So I'm going to have massive health routine. I'm going to lower my stimulus and different friction points. The next thing I would lay out is the social layer. It would be the social layer. And the social layer would be what friends can I maybe just kind of put on pause for a little bit or just maybe explicitly cut out? And then what friends could I talk to more so that I have a better baseline for reality? Right? We don't realize, but our brains, not only are they chemical processes, but I'd say above anything, especially before thoughts and before emotions, I would say thoughts and emotions stem and a lot of their reason and origin come from a social basis. So thoughts and emotions form from a social basis, not thoughts and emotions create an emotional basis or a social basis, right? They form from a social basis. So I would operate with that perspective, right? Our brains are extremely social. And when I'm able to get around more healthier social connections or just more often be social, my brain can start to understand that it's safe, and it can start to process things at a much better level so that you can have that expansion. But like to have that level of expansion, you need to get around the right people. So get around the right people, maybe talk to more mentors that are high level, stuff like that. And that's going to elevate again what? Your perspective. And then you're able to actually get out of this state that you're in, right? So you can already start to see this stacking. You understand that if I tell myself a story, I need to completely step out of the frame. And if I find myself over and over in the same position, it's because I'm on this perspective trap. I then understand that there's multiple lenses of reality, and that, okay, if it's hard to switch, I attack the problem at a chemical layer, attacking both the chemical and the social layer. I mean, you do this alone, and some of this may sound basic. It gets a little basic to me, but I even forget about it when I go through these states. Um, you will feel like a completely new human because you're just resetting your body. You're like, oh wait, I just lost it a little bit with social media. I just lost it with my health a little bit. I'm just over fixated on this thought. Let me step out and expand my perspective. Let me start thinking new and better ideas. Let me start reading different new things, right? And you start expanding outwards instead of trying to solve it, instead of trying to outthink your way out of a state. You start just generating a new state through new actions, right? So that is another core principle of this is you can't outthink your way out of depression. You can't outthink your way out of a certain state. You do it through this forward action of like, okay, what new perspective can I read about? What new action can I take to grow my business? What can I do right now in this moment to move forward? And when you start just getting out of your head and just start stepping one step at a time, these thoughts that you get so attached to in this circle start to dissolve because that's all they can do when you're actually locked in and tapped in, right? So those are the things there. Now, the final thing, right, beyond the frame, this is the final part, is this document here. So most people, they're chasing outcomes and they're hoping for state. So they're going to go out in life and they're going to get a really fast car. They're going to go out in life and be like, why am I feeling this way? Let me try to be with more women. All right, I can't. I'm not in the state. Let me try to get XYZ material item. Right? They're going to chase outcomes and hope for states. That's what 99% of people do. This is this part right here. They're chasing outcomes and hoping for states. And you can't do that because outcomes are temporary. So therefore your state will be temporary. That's why this doesn't work, right? It's outcome dependent. The whole system is flawed because there's just a lot of things you can't control in the universe, right? We try to control as much as we can, but more of it is not in our control. And that's very hard for us to understand. We always try to be like, what can we control? What can we control? We can control a lot, but when you put it in the grand scheme of the universe, right? We didn't choose to be here. We didn't control how our body works. We didn't control different people we bump into. A lot of it is letting go of control. Quite honestly, is the secret of life. And we tend to err on the side of being egocentric and assuming that we can control more than we can, and it creates a lot of our suffering. So most people, they're chasing outcomes and hoping for states. That is a fragile foundation. And that's why you see people that, when they win the lottery, they blow it all and they're broke, right? Or they get a bunch of money and they're not happy. Or they get the relationship that seems really cool from the outside, but then it fails, right? Because they didn't have the actual state to accept it. So everything will always calibrate towards your state that you have, right? So how it actually works is you have the state and then the outcome follows. It's always been like that, right? That's how you can always have a base because then no matter what outcome, no matter if you lose the person, you lose the business, you lose the different thing, if I have the state of feeling complete, if I have the state of constantly having an expanding vision, if I have the state that I can create my reality, then there's no other choice but to outcomes start to produce from there. And then when the outcomes produce, great. But if they don't produce, then it's also great because I am in the state regardless. And any outcome that you get in the universe, right? This is the crazy thing about getting a Lamborghini or getting a thing, right? Picture any great thing that you'd want in life, right? It could be a person, could be a mentor, could be like an activity thing you want to go down the list. I guarantee I know the reason that you want all of those different things. It's for a feeling. It's for a feeling or for a story or for an identity. But those are all essentially for what? A feeling. You're doing it for a feeling. And what is a feeling? A feeling is a state. So you're trying to get outcomes to create a certain state. And it will do that temporarily, but then it goes away. So then you have to ask yourself, why am I trying to get these outcomes that create temporary results? But then also, if I'm just secretly chasing the state, and state is pretty much the only thing I can control in my reality, why don't I just decide to have that state now without the externals? Right? Think about how crazy that is. You can just decide that. You're like, I don't want to play that game where I have to get a Lamborghini to be happy. I don't want to play that game where I have to have a certain amount of money in my bank account. I don't have to play that game where I have to get the approval of someone else before I move forward on something. Why can't I just be full of love right now? Why can't I just be full of wealth right now? And you can. You legitimately can. And for some weird reason, the universe responds to that because you start to become unattached, you start to become complete, and you start to gravitate and be this gravitating person because you're no longer trying to get things from people. It's a thing where like people want to be around you because you make them feel complete because they're needy and they're trying to get things from the world, right? So anything you want, any state, anything, you create that now, and then the universe has no other choice but to bend and start giving you that reality through that, right? So that's that. This is the final takeaway. So this is a lot of stuff that I went through. It's advanced, but the final things that you want to think of. If I was in this state where it's just like feels like I have everything, but I still feel nothing and I feel dull with life, what I'm going to do to be happy is start with the chemistry level. I'm going to be like, all right, I'm feeling off. What is my diet at? What is my physiology at? What's my steps at? What's my sleep at? And I'm going to start to measure that, right? You should be measuring your sleep, right? I use the Oura ring. You can use whatever you want, but you want to start measuring your sleep, measuring your diet. You want to really be like, how can I just like have more physical connection to life? When you do that, you're already going to start expanding your perspective, right? Now, when we start doing that, you're going to start releasing the lens. So, just having the simple awareness that I talked about of understanding that when you try to solve it and outthink your way, you're just solidifying it. What I want you to do is be radically okay with that lens. I want you to just accept it and be like, this is completely okay. I'm not resisting this lens and I'm not trying to explain this lens because resistance and explanation is what makes it stronger. Remember that. Resistance and explanation and justification is what makes it stronger. And if we keep making it stronger, you can't free yourself from it. So you have to approach it from radical self-forgiveness and radical just being okay with it and just being like, this is completely fine. This is completely fine. And what about this new perspective, right? And starting to read expansive perspective, right? Which goes into this one, right? Expanding the frame. So as soon as I start letting go of this through radical self-forgiveness, I start to expand the frame. I start to talk to new people. I start to cut off people that are maybe holding me down. I start to change my inputs of social media, right? Now my frame of reality is starting to break out of this previous mold over to a new and more expansive reality, right? And then the final is embracing what it is, right? Not fighting the feeling, not chasing it, not trying to fix it, just being okay with the current moment. So when I'm doing these things, right, and you start to see this like unity of it stacking, you start to realize like I've cleared the chemistry, I understand the lens, I'm expanding the frame, and I'm okay and self-accepting along the way. This is when that cloudiness starts to lift and you start to get that like HD vision of life again. And you start to be like, wait, I feel complete. I feel more human than I did before coming out of this. So this is all this feeling that you've been feeling of you have everything, but simultaneously nothing. It is just simply a signal that you're maybe not as connected as life as you could be. And all you need to do is reactivate, let go of maybe some things, let go of some emotional weight. And that will actually allow you to move forward and have more effectiveness and have more abundance as you go through life. So, this is one of the first episodes in these masterclass mindset series where we'll either go through advanced influence protocols or go through advanced mindset things to help keep you at a very high calibrated level as you perform, make money, grow businesses, stuff like that. If you enjoyed this video, leave comments, leave likes. I respond to comments and stuff and really thoughtful questions. I like doing that. So feel free if you have any questions around this, post it below. But most importantly, take action on this and understand that this feeling, while it's unique, while it's frustrating, it's something that you can solve for, and understand that it is simply a lens and an emotional problem. And the more that you free yourself from that story, the more that you can feel complete. So take action on this and keep going.